Every time I use that elevator pitch, it's about HIV positive Black and Asian drag queens should become political terrorists. Everyone always says, "Oh, is it a documentary?" And I'm like, it should be.
Hi, I'm Peter Canet, and I'm here with someone I've known a really long time. I'm so excited he's here, Stephen Winter, the filmmaker of the 1996 film Chocolate Babies. So I rewatched Chocolate Babies on the Criterion Channel a couple nights ago. It remains an incredibly fabulous film that I'm so excited is kind of getting this moment right now. The 4K restorations are sort of touring around, including here at TIFF. 30 years after the fact, what does it feel like to have this moment for a film that obviously I'm sure is near and dear to you?
Well, I was a kid when it came out. I was a kid when I wrote it, I was a kid when I directed it, and I was a kid when it was released. And I knew it was really good. I knew it was really good. And I also knew that the environment that indie film was in at the time, in New York especially, was not quite conducive to it. And since Chocolate Babies didn't fit into that, and of course of systematic institutional racism and homophobia and transphobia, it fell through a crack and was overlooked and misunderstood, but I always felt that it would come back in some fashion. And it never really went away because everybody who saw it loved it. And even when it was hard to access, people would seek it out. And over the last few years, a younger generation of filmmaker and film fan has discovered it. It's now getting written up in books and people writing papers about it. And it's wonderful because not only because I'm here to see it happen and all the actors are also here to see it happen, but the timelessness of the story speaks very much to today. The story is zany, but it's angry.
I was really struck about how much it speaks to today. I mean, just like so many, but in like a zany, fun way. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, you know, infighting within the queer community, the conservatives coming for us, and like this, you know, it's remarkable how little has changed in so many ways. But then also, obviously, things have changed a lot.
Yeah. The film was drawn from my youthful experiences in ACT UP Chicago and in the Black nationalism community, and just trying to be an active citizen and organizer, and like looking up to older people who had been around for a minute, and how great they were, how vibrant they were, how angry they were, how much fun they could still have, but also how the intersectionality didn't always work out, you know, because that's the way oppression works. You know, they want to turn the dark-skinned people against light-skinned people, turn the femme people against the mask, turn the older generation against the younger generation, and sow those seeds of dissonance that the purpose of revolutionary organizing and all coming together in a community should be able to solve. And I liked how, when I look back on the film now, how my youthful self digested all that stuff and then spat it out into this narrative.
Do you want to talk a little bit about making it? I just am really curious, just sort of how that came together, because it looks very guerrilla. I'm assuming it okay, yeah.
Yeah, we shot for 3 weeks on Fuji film.
Okay.
Because Fuji was better than Kodak for doing brown skin and black skin, and also just makes things look gorgeous and sort of cotton candy-ish. And I wanted it to have, I wanted it to be pretty like that. I didn't want it to have that harsh Kodak quality, although I do like it, but not for this piece. I got myself involved in a Black queer theater scene that was happening. Black queer people weren't getting TV and film work, but they were doing theater. And once I explained what I was doing, making a comedy drama about HIV positive Black and Asian drag queens who become political terrorists and kidnap a closeted conservative politician, everybody got on board. And by the way, every time I use that elevator pitch, it's about HIV positive Black and Asian drag queens should become political terrorists. Everyone always says, "Oh, is it a documentary?" And I'm like, it should be.
I'm really curious about sort of the young queer people who are getting to see it for the first time right now at these screenings or at the Criterion. Have you come across anybody who's sort of spoken to you about seeing the film for the first time and their impression of it?
John Cameron Mitchell just hosted a screening for Chocolate Babies down in New Orleans.
Okay.
With all these queer kids. And they were living, absolutely living. Because I think the anger and the love that is twinned in the film really speaks to where they're at right now.
Yeah.
Speaks to where I'm at right now. So, and also, it doesn't feel like any other movie because the main characters are always wearing costumes, like Afro-punk costumes or fabulous fop costumes. It doesn't scream 1996. It doesn't have like the oversized linens and flannels and such. It has a timeless quality. And there's no cell phones. People are making deals with each other. And people are arguing with each other in mostly a productive way.
Yeah.
Because that was also my experience of like organizing and being young and trying to figure out how to like do revolutionary stuff in this world, is that you meet people and you debate with them. You debate in a healthy, upbeat way that sometimes can turn sour, but always has, we're trying to move up. We're trying to get some uplift. And one of the people who saw the film down there talked about how they get so frustrated with the aggro of conversation that you can find like on Twitter or in the world, where people are like coming up with the next quip rather than really listening to each other.
Yeah.
And they said they liked how the characters were always listening to each other, no matter how evil they got. Evil with like, a queen evil.
So Chocolate Babies was your first film, 27 or so years ago. But since then you've worked in, so many different capacities on so many incredible queer film classics like Short Bus, Tarnation, How to Survive a Plague, Jason and Shirley.
I am the heartbeat of queer cinema in New York City.
Having been there at this moment in the early to mid 90s, like new queer cinema obviously was this huge moment. I'm just curious from your perspective, how you feel we've evolved in terms of like queer cinema. I mean, television too is having a sort of incredible moment in terms of queer storytelling. I just want to sort of know your thoughts about where things are right now.
Well, some people answer that question by saying things have gotten worse because it's so much harder to make an independent film, much less a queer one, and get it out there. But at the same time, the issues and the aesthetics and the voices that new queer cinema of the 90s sort of catalyzed has sort of gotten into the water system. So it's very much everywhere in a lot of ways, and it's no longer, I think, as ghettoized as it once was. You will see lots of people of all different stripes and sexualities absorbing and enjoying queer stories. And whether that's like one of those weird thrillers, like that take place on a lake or something, or that wonderful show, Sort of, which I love.
CBC.
I mean, that show's amazing. And when I look at the aesthetics of that show, this feels very Go Fish.
Yeah.
This is a daughter of Go Fish, and the acting style, the way that the stories are put together, even the cliffhangers, which is a very TV thing that films don't do, seems to have a more of a cinematic quality now that we're at this side of things. So I still feel an optimism about it. I feel that when I talk to like my nieces and nephews, who are all about 18 to 21, queer film is not like some kind of specialty item. It's part of everything else that they consume.
Yeah.
And they look at it as a normal, regular baseline thing. And it's not so much how queer is it, but how good is it, and I like that those strides have been made. But of course, it's really difficult to make films, and it's really difficult to tell queer stories. And it is also tricky sometimes to please a queer audience who are always looking for more of themselves in a film, as well they should. And I love that challenge of it.
Yeah. In terms of your own contributions over that time, is there a specific project that really stands out to you as something you're so proud of in your career?
Tarnation.
Okay.
I produced Tarnation, that was directed by Jonathan Coet, who is a Texas-born, self-taught filmmaker who created an amazing film out of 20 years of his home videos. Growing up queer in Texas and caring for his schizo-affected mother, Renee. And that film, with the help of Gus Van Sant and John Cameron Mitchell, and I and many others, went from the Mix Experimental Film Festival to Sundance, to Cannes, to the New York Film Festival, and was at the top of the end of the year list for 2004. Roger Ebert loved it. It got worldwide distribution. And that film is having its 20th anniversary next year, where it shall be remastered and put back together, and Jonathan will come back out and talk about it, and a whole new group of people, a whole new generation of people can discover how special Tarnation is. That was a film, a queer film, that if these things didn't line up right, might never have been finished, because Jonathan was coming to the industry from the outside. But I and others were able to recognize it and help shepherd it to the place that it was. And it will never be touched. It makes me kind of emotional. But yes, I love all my projects and all the things that I've worked on. But Tarnation will always be the jewel in the crown.
Yeah, I saw it maybe just shortly after it came out, but I think I was like 20 or 21, and it is a mind-blowing creation that is like so singular. There's nothing else like it. So thank you so much for being part of getting that out into the world.
It was my pleasure. It was my duty and my pleasure.
And recently you moved into directing podcasts. I know there's...
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. You have the new one that's coming out is The Space Within.
On Audible, it's called The Space Within. It stars Jessica Chastain and, hats off Peter, Ellen Burstyn.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's a sci-fi drama. And it dropped last week. All 8 episodes are available to stream. It's fabulous. And that is the first time I got to do a straight drama with sci-fi elements, which has always been a sweet spot for me that I've never really been able to explore. And prior to that, I did a cult hit fiction Afro-punk podcast called Adventures in New America that I'm about to reboot. And on Spotify last year, a documentary series about Sylvester, the You Make Me Feel Mighty Real disco singer. Definitive documentary series that's also amazing to listen to. So yeah, I've been podcasting.
I'm curious how that works, like directing a podcast. Like what goes into that exactly?
Yes. So for The Space Within, that was a show that had been written by the 2 amazing showrunners, and they needed a director. And so I auditioned for the gig and I got it. And it required directing 72 speaking characters, including 4 octogenarians and 6 juveniles.
Okay.
And the A-lister of all A-listers, Jessica Chastain, who was the most amazing and collaborative and fun and friendly actor to work with over the course of a year and a half.
Wow.
Almost no point were any of the actors in the room at the same time. We had to do most of it remotely because we started during pandemic times. So it's all just doing it musically. Like, how does this tone fit with that tone? And me keeping track of what the actors are doing and how they're going to blend them together when we edit it together. You would never know that they weren't in the same room together. I probably shouldn't even said anything. But that is the particular fun challenge of that show.
Yeah, I actually have just sort of trying to get into narrative podcasts, which I hadn't really listened to before. But it's like, I think it's a really wonderful medium that sort of has a lot of opportunities for great storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. And you can also do a lot more with a podcast in terms of the talent that you can get, rather than, because you only need them for a few hours. So the Chastain Show also has Bobby Cannavale and Michael Shannon and Michael Stuhlbarg. It's so great working with actors who are doing it for the love of it.
Yeah.
And to try to figure out how to convey a performance of just your voice. Is a instinct sometimes. You get in front of a microphone and you start talking like this, and you can't really do that in a podcast, for a fiction podcast. You gotta make it more conversational. And so I learned a lot about how to do that by just working with these people.
I'm also curious what you're working on next.
I am collaborating with Justin Ling of the CBC on a true crime television show based on his wonderful podcast, The Village.
About the murders here.
About the murders here. And we will be expanding that to encompass murders that have plagued gay communities in not just Toronto, but Montreal, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and the middle of the country. And my plan, which I shall not reveal, will be an aesthetic and political and emotional reinterpretation of the true crime genre. We are going to make it so that everybody who watches this show, and they will, because it's going to be so hot, will be able to understand and appreciate why queer life is valuable. And I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I don't think you could have said something that would make me more excited. So
I knew you'd like it.
Yeah. who knew there'd be a CBC connection in our chat?
Surprise! Yeah. I'm coming back for you.
Thank you so much for sharing your time and your words with me. It was so lovely to have you here, Stephen.
Peter, it's so good to see you again. I love visiting with you. I love coming here, and thank you for having me.
All right. It's kind of cool because the photos are in the photo.